All right. Thanks, everyone, and welcome to those watching us later on YouTube to the Tulsa Center for Spiritual Living and our monthly theme of living out loud, speaking truth to circumstance. I want to start this talk out with a little sharing of gratitude. Gratitude for the people in this room and for the people who call this community home. I love you and I appreciate you. In the last 2 weeks that I've been gone, it's the first time in nearly 20 years for me that I was able to take a vacation and not have my phone ringing and my emails dinging and calls to say, you are so essential that I need you to interrupt your vacation. Now, guess what? I'm not making my job wrong or anything wrong because I said yes to all of that, right? It feels good to be needed and essential and wanted and necessary. But guess what? It also feels really good to be not so essential, right? There's beautiful value in that. And what I found is in the first couple of days away, I was checking in with work. Some of you know I have a new job. And they finally just shut me down. I was like, how'd that meeting go? Big meeting. Hey, you know what? They said, we'll let you know when you get back. So, but that isn't that a sign of a healthy, supportive environment, right? I mean, if there's an emergency, we get a call, whatever. But that is also true for this community, for this center, right? This center lived before me. It lived before, hard to believe, but it even lived before Dell and Malia.
Wow.
I mean, and thank God you're here because it'd be hard to run the place without you. But there's a life continuity that goes on. And to be able to be away from church community, to know that, Chris is going to show up with a powerful talk, that Brad was going to come in and kick the podium over, like the money makers at the temple, Jesus at the temple, and just let spirit flow. Like there's beauty in knowing that when people move, other people move into the element. And that's what I love about this place. And I love the collaboration and beauty. And I did listen to the talks, and I think it was Carol last week. It's hard to tell afterwards. She said, Brad, it's nice to be in your space while you're blossoming. Something like that. Was that Carol?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was just really, really a nice, it says a lot about our community here. And yeah, thanks. It's fun to watch everyone, including you, blossom in love and in community, or bloom as I do with our 60th anniversary. Right. Let your soul bloom. So the talk this week is called is called The Standing Stone. Interesting themes this month, I thought. And I'll start by saying that circumstances can seem very, very real, right? We are beings. They can be like stone walls in your path. But Ernest reminds us to think independently of any existing circumstances. Think independently. This is what is meant when Holmes talks about us entering into the absolute. By entering into that different realm of thinking, we connect with the infinite inner power from which all circumstances spring. All right, so we got this. We have circumstances in our world, some of which feel like doo-doo, and some of which feel like heaven on earth. And all of those sprung from the absolute in response to our thinking, our beliefs, the collective consciousness. But what's behind it, the absolute, the one power, described in many ways, like in Chris's song, it is greater than any circumstance. Ernest also said that spirit is forever taking form and forever deserting the form which it has taken. Spirit is taking form, coming into manifestation, and sloughing off that form, constantly moving in the absolute. With every form, there are people who are happy with it, unhappy with it, or who could care less about it. No circumstance is right or wrong over others. I'm not talking about values here, right? We can take a stance for value of love and say, there's nothing wrong here. But I'm talking about circumstances, right? No circumstance is really right or wrong over others. Last year in 2022, the US Supreme Court struck down Roe v. Wade, which was a long-standing precedent codifying or enshrining the right, a woman's right to choose an abortion in the Constitution. When the Supreme Court in 1973 found in favor of Roe over the state's anti-abortion laws and struck them down, many cheered and many cried. The ones who cheered saw that as a step forward. Those who cried viewed it as a step backwards. Now, last year in 2022, those who cheered are crying, and those who cried are cheering. The same idea of steps forward and backward are being advanced. Many thought that Roe v. Wade would stand forever. Many who supported striking it down now think that it's forever. But as Jesus said, heaven and earth shall pass away, but my word shall never pass away. It is back to the idea of the absolute, right? Of the absolute, of what we choose to do. Again, in Chris's song, so we choose, right? We get to choose into that. Nothing on earth, and thus no circumstance or set of circumstances, is eternal. That would be a blessing, right? This should inspire us to rise up and not get caught in the standing stone wall of circumstances and conditions, and to anchor our minds back into the absolute, which is the real infinite. We're talking a lot of Ernest today. I know Morris is happy. Ernest said, one alone in consciousness with the infinite constitutes a complete majority. One alone in consciousness with the infinite is a complete majority. I am now aligned with the allness of one. That statement gives us direction and knows how to face those standing stones in our lives. This is the same invitation that Jesus gave when he tells us to go into the closet, into secret, and commune with the Father. When the stones speak to us of limitation, of their solidarity, the hard wall, and our frailty, of those stones' power and our weakness, go alone into consciousness with the infinite. Brad talked a little bit about this last week. Right? Brad had all kinds of ideas for what was the way forward until he went into the closet, communed with spirit, and got some different answers than what he had been thinking it was going to be. What do I do with this, God? That's a shift from what I was thinking. So it's in that quiet connection with the one that we find our true strength, a strength far greater than the stones of circumstance. And this is really interesting. The very word circumstance means that which is standing around us. Circumstance, that which is standing around us. What is standing around us is a combination of our own thinking and the collective unconsciousness of others. Those of you taking classes in the science of mind, we refer to this as race consciousness. The entire human race is constantly depositing thoughts into the creative medium of God, and out comes responses. More powerful than all that is the infinite, standing within us and all around us, above us, below us, everywhere present, calling us to see it through the walls. Instead of fighting with the stones or accepting the stones as just the way it is, we go within and solidify our majority with all that is. Read that in. Instead of giving power to the stones or accepting it as just the way it is, we solidify our majority, one, in consciousness with the infinite, is a complete majority. Fellow minister, she's a unity minister, Jane Simmons, shares the idea of transition versus transformation. So imagine, and she uses this analogy, imagine you find yourself swimming in the ocean. Suddenly a rip current starts pulling you out to sea. Remind me afterwards, after service, I'll talk to you about my swimming experience at the Jersey Shore. You may battle against it, make some progress. You may have seen on TV that it's important to swim, let go with the current or swim parallel, right, to get out of the current. Yeah, easier said than done when survival says get yourself ashore. And then along come a couple of swimmers, strong swimmers, lifeguards maybe, who come along to help you. After a long struggle, your struggle and theirs, you finally make it back to shore. That's an example of a transition from a place of fear and danger, accepting help and support, making that long, slow struggle to make things better. Transformation is when you suddenly wake up, realizing you were in your bed dreaming, you're completely dry, and you were never in the open. Transformation comes not through struggle and extreme efforts or heroics on your part. Transformation comes from connecting with the deep, often unconscious truth of our being in our meditation practice. Transition can improve a situation. Getting from here to there, I'm asking for some help, I'm getting it done. But transformation radically alters our situation at the core. What our world itself is calling for right now is not battling with the transitional forms that appear to be stone walls, but a transformation which can only come from turning away from the battle and toward the infinite. We can ask, would I rather be right about my cause, my stone, or would I rather surrender into a greater way? Again, Ernest says, now, to daily meditate on the perfect life is to embody the great ideal. It's a royal road to freedom. Ernest is inviting us to meditate on the perfect life. It's not to meditate on the idea of a perfect life, but the capital T, capital H, capital E, perfect life. Often this calls for us to surrender our own idea, Brad, to make room for the greater idea. Emerson invites us to get our bloated nothingness out of the way of the flow of divine circuits. I could have sworn Ernest said that, but it was Emerson who inspired Ernest. Get our bloated nothingness out of the way of the flow of divine circuits. He's telling us the same thing. We all come to a point where our ego and our intellect finally has to admit, I don't know how to fix this. As Michael Beckwith says, a bad day for the ego is a good day for the soul. I love that. I'll knock myself down a peg. When we finally banged our heads against the stones of life enough, we have the opportunity to turn to that which is greater than we are. But it's not to get this infinite presence to do things my way. All right. No, it's to let go of my way for the highway. This surrender is required for that true transformation to occur. We invite this transformation by being still, asking, and listening. We invite this transformation through the practice of meditation and showing up here in church. We invite this transformation by imagining our standing stone wall and placing it on the altar and saying, I have done all I know. Now this is yours. We must turn alone to the infinite. Alone means without our agenda, without our baggage, without our plans, without our conditioned sense of right and wrong. We must let go of our false gods and seek the kingdom of the one. Only then can all else be added. Now, there's an author who I love. He's a spiritual and an activist. His name is Howard Thurman, and he wrote a book called The Inward Journey. And he shared this story of two men who faced each other in a prison cell. They belonged to different countries. their roots watered by streams of different cultures. One was under sentence of death, scheduled to be executed in just a few short hours. The other was a visitor, a friend. This, even though months before they were enemies in a great war. They bade each other farewell for the first time, or for the last time. The visitor was deeply troubled, but he could not find his way through this emotional maze in which he was caught. To give voice to what cried out. This is what he wanted to say, but could not. We may not be able to stop and undo the hard wrongs of the great world outside. But through you and me, no evil shall come either in the unknown, where you are going, or in this imperfect and haunted dimension of awareness through which I move. Thus, between us, we shall cancel out all private and personal evil, thus arrest private and personal consequences to blind action and reaction, thus prevent specifically the great incomprehension and misunderstanding, hatred and revenge of our time from spreading further. It is time to rest from the battles and wars of good, evil, right, and wrong. In fact, the Chris's song. It is time to stop beating our heads against the stones. There will always be stones, but we can live in a greater freedom, leaving them standing where they are, while we cavort and live in freedom, the only true agenda of the universe. Sometimes we have to put down our swords and shields and actually listen to the stones. What are they saying to us? I really needed to hear this talk today. What is their gift to us? We can approach them with curiosity and wonder instead of anger and righteousness. Can we listen to someone who has a very different viewpoint than ours? Can we set aside that which we're very certain we're right about and ask, is there a different way to do this? Is there a way to include both views? Spirit, you see, is a paradox. So it's natural that we'll be called to live in and as paradox too. Spend time going to the sweet water of life fed by infinite beingness, and be gentle with yourself and the world. Who knows, maybe one day one of those stones will be a beautiful and valued part of your garden. So as we move out of this talk, we normally go into prayer. But I want to share with you all a video, which will stop the recording before we show that. And those who are watching later online, just look for Melanie DeMore online and a song called The Standing Stone. This song was written, and I believe she's a Unitarian Universalist, and written for a religious scientist, a musician named Etika Luckett, who died of cancer, but had a valiant struggle and stand. To know that those standing stones, those walls we see around us, as we melt into the infinite and welcome our community of supporters and love into that place, that we can then allow it to blossom and bloom and harmonize with that true vibration of life. So thank you so much for those watching this later online. Know that you are loved and loved.